covering and practice ethical social distancing at all times. I would like to welcome our Mayor, Councillor Michael Collins, our two public representatives, Councillor Emmett O'Brien and Joe Ledden. Also a warm welcome to our military representatives, Lieutenant Colonel Pat Moran, Sergeant Major Stanley Hurley, Piper Mike Egan, Jerry Enright of the Organisation of National Ex-Servicemen, and Tony Liddy of the Irish United Nations Veterans Association. My name is Mike McLaughlin. I'm part of the four-man group that came together last February to honour Captain Tom Keane. I'm an amateur historian with a wide range of interests. So bear with me, I'm still a bit nervous. Other members of our group are Tom Toomey, who has been involved in local history for over 30 years. Tom has published a number of works, including The War of Independence in Limerick 1912-21. In addition, Tom has written a number of booklets and lectures regularly on local history. Then there's Stephen Kelly, Stephen there at the end, ex-Army Company Quartermaster Sergeant with the Military Police here in Limerick, co-author of The Images of Sarsfield Barracks 2008, the FCA at Military History 2011, and also Michael Walsh, who's curator of the little-known the Military Museum in Sarsfield Barracks, which is the best kept secret in Limerick, I think, who was a photographer for the event for the day. Thanks, Mike. We intend to publish a booklet on Tom, which we hope we can complete by the end of the year. There is one person that our group is greatly indebted to, and that is Mr. PJ Varley, the owner of number 69 Wolftown Street, who has been fully supportive and agreeable to our cause. Without PJ's support and consent, we would not be here today. Thank you, PJ. I would also like to welcome two young school pupils. Firstly, Niamh O'Callaghan, who is representing her school, Our Lady Queen of Peace, National School, Janesborough, and Master Cormac O'Dwyer, who represents the Model National School, O'Connell Avenue. We hope, lads, that this event today will live long in your memories. To all other invited guests, you are most welcome. Captain Tom Keane was born here on the 15th of January 1887 at number 69 Wolftown Street, then known as Clooney Street. He was a second born to Thomas Senior Keane and Joanna Keane née Cronin, who came from Mungret. Also here at the time was Tom's only sister, Margaret. She was born in 1881 in Donnelly's Lane off Carey's Road, a lane now long gone. Sadly, Margaret died unmarried in 1902 at the age of 21. Research has shown that Tom's father, Thomas Senior, was born in Pallaskenry, County Limerick, and moved to the city in the 1870s. However, at some stage after 1887, the family were found to be in the townland of Kilmacat, Pallaskenry, where Tom's younger brother, Daniel Christopher, was born in November 1889. The family moved again, and in 1901 census has them back in Limerick City and living at number 63 Bonfield Lane at Lunker Street, another lane now long gone. The 1911 census declared that there were three of the family remaining, Mother Joanna and sons Tom and Daniel, living at number 75 Clare Street. In 1914, Tom married Helena O'Sullivan, also known as Lena, from Clare Street. Tom was at this time a carpenter and worked at the Roxburgh Rail Works for the Great Southern and Western Railway Company. At his time of execution, he lived at number 1 Moores Lane off St. Lelia Street. There were two children born to the family while Tom was still alive. Firstly was Charles Cecil Keane, 1916 to 1983. He married a Mary McNamara from Thomangate in 1946. After extensive research, no known children from this marriage. Margaret, also known as Greta Keane, 1918 to 1997. She married Joseph Glynn from Pennywell in 1941. There are no known children from this marriage. When Tom was executed in 1921, his wife Lena was heavily pregnant with their third child. That child, christened Thomas, was born on the 24th of September 1921, but most sadly died on the 5th of December that same year. The only living relatives to us at present are on Lena's side of the family, the O'Sullivans, and Greta's in-laws, the Glynns. Des Ryan, who is here with us today, and Sergeant Barry Sheehan. Des is known to many by the articles he has contributed to the Old Limerick Journal. Des and Barry are related to Lena's family, the O'Sullivans from Clare Street. The other relative is Tony O'Shea, who is also here and is from Granville Park. is related to Greta Keane through her husband's family, the Glynns from Pennywell. I need a break for water. To put things in context, to give you an idea of what conditions were like in 1921, Limerick City had a population of roughly 38,000 people, and it's a much smaller city that we know now. To illustrate this, the West End city boundary was out at Punch's Cross, the northern boundary was out at my side of the country, Sexton Street North in Thomondgate, and the eastern boundary was out Dwyer's Bridge in Clunker Street. Families were packed tightly into tenement dwellings with dozens of narrow lanes spread throughout the city with cramped living conditions and little sanitary services. There was a constant presence of military, RIC and black and tans. Hence, IRA volunteers and common man had to be extremely vigilant in their activities in the city areas. Now it's time I call upon my next speaker, Tom Tooney, who will tell us more about Captain Tom Keane.
Today, June 4th, marks the 100th anniversary of the execution of Captain Thomas Keane, an officer in the 2nd Battalion of the Mid-Limerick Brigade IRA. In the period from the 1st of November 1920 until the 7th of June 1921, 24 IRA members were executed. 13 were executed in Cork, 10 in Dublin, and 1, Thomas Keane, was executed in Limerick. Thomas Keane was one of 6 men captured in the Ballysimon-Killonan area on the morning of the 1st of May 1921. Thomas Keane, along with his comrade Henry Clancy, was captured at Ballysimon that morning and placed on a lorry as prisoners. They had been taking back 2 revolvers that had been loaned to another unit when they were surprised by a police patrol near the railway bridge at Ballysimon. Both revolvers were unloaded, but that was immaterial in the eyes of the military authorities. Clancy, who was an ex-British soldier, attempted to escape by jumping from the lorry and running down the road. But the RIC opened fire and the 22-year-old was riddled before he had gone 30 yards. The man in charge of the RIC patrol at Ballysimon was Sergeant James Horton, who was a native of County Mayo. The other 4 men were captured at Hennessy's of Killonan that morning. Timothy Murphy, Ned Punch, Michael Hennessy and Morgan Portley had all taken part in the Drumkeane ambush in February 1921, when the RIC suffered its greatest loss of life, 11 men killed, outside of County Cork. Indeed, Murphy and Punch were the 2 most active IRA men in Limerick City, and just a few nights previously they had taken part in an ambush at Carey's Road, where a number of Black and Tans and RIC were wounded. Their 2 comrades, Portley and Hennessy, were very active members of the IRA in the Ballybricken area, but fortunately for Hennessy and Portley, they were not known to the RIC patrol that arrested them. Because they were not known to the arresting police, Hennessy and Portley were eventually interned in Spike Island. They had managed to dispose of their weapons before they were arrested. Murphy, Punch and Keane, however, were court-martialed. All 3 men had been found in possession of weapons, loaded in the case of Murphy and Punch, and unloaded in the case of Thomas Keane. All 3 men were found guilty and sentenced to death. Appeals were immediately lodged for the 3 men. Keane appeared to have by far the best case for clemency. He was not a very active IRA man, and while he had been found in possession of a revolver, he was not loaded, and he had not previously come to the attention of the authorities. In addition, he was a married man with young children, and his wife was expecting their 3rd child. All the pointers seemed to indicate that Keane had the best chance for clemency. Punch and Murphy were the two most active IRA men in Limerick City. As early as 1918, Punch had attempted to hold up an RIC patrol at Ballinacurra, for which he was arrested and served a term in prison. Murphy also had been active from a very early age, and like Punch, he had taken part in the rescue of Robert Burns from the city home in April 1919. The RIC sergeant in charge of the patrol that arrested Thomas Keane was James Horton, a native of County Mayo. Horton was the most notorious member of the RIC in Limerick, and as early as 1918 he had become noted as a town bully. In December 1920 he was involved in the raid on a dance at Cahergilmore, where 5 IRA men were killed. In February 1921 he was in charge of a patrol at Blackwater Mill, where 2 unarmed teenage brothers, Cecil and Aidan O'Donovan, were shot dead while searching for birds' nests. He was also involved at Singland on the day of Henry Clancy's funeral, when another unarmed man, Henry Downey, was shot dead. The appeals of Keane, Murphy and Punch were eventually heard, and amazingly, the appeals of Murphy and Punch were upheld, while that of Thomas Keane was turned down. Keane's case has often held to be similar to that of Thomas Traynor, who was executed some time previously in Dublin. Traynor, like Keane, was a married man with a large family, and whilst not terribly active as an IRA man, the shock and awe of executing the father of a family was a much more effective deterrent than executing single men. Indeed, the case between Sergeant James Horton and Thomas Keane had one final twist, as testified by Madge Daly in her witness statement. Daly noted that the heavily pregnant Mrs. Keane was seated on a chair outside the gate of the barracks awaiting her husband's execution, when the chair was kicked from under her by the gallant Sergeant Horton. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Very enlightening. Thanks very much indeed. I'd now like to introduce our Mayor, Councillor Michael Collins, to say a few words and unveil the plaque. Councillor Collins.
Good morning, everybody. Mike, Chairman, and your committee, my council colleagues, Ledden and O'Brien, members of the Defence Forces, invited guests and local people. First of all, I'm delighted and privileged to be here this morning to commemorate the late Captain Thomas Keane. I suppose I have a bit of a connection in a small way, that my late grandfather and granduncle were members of the old IRA. They were IRA volunteers in West Limerick. But my grandfather spent some time in active service in Limerick. He worked as a boots in the George Hotel, and he was in the IRA under the Captain Batlaffin. And it's quite possible that he would have known Captain Thomas Keane. So there's a small connection in that sense. Also, Councillor O'Brien informed me that he's here today because he gave some funding towards the plaque that we're just about to unveil here shortly. And of course, Councillor Ledden has been very supportive of this as well with Mike McLaughlin and his team. So thanks, lads, for your support on that as well. Captain Thomas Keane's father came from Pallaskinley, so that's the Councillor O'Brien's connection here. So look, it's been a difficult year for everybody. It's great that we can physically meet today to honour our fallen comrades that fought for the ultimate, gave their ultimate sacrifice and fought for our freedom. So it's important to remember the likes of Thomas Keane and all his comrades, and Tom has eloquently spoken about many of the members here locally. We also have to remember, I suppose, the female members that were very active in coming them on. who are often forgotten when we commemorate our fallen dead. They did huge amounts of work in the background, and thankfully we don't know of anything that have been shot or murdered. Tom, I don't know, can you clarify that in Limerick? Have been members of Common Demand that were? No. So thankfully we didn't lose any of our female Common Demand, but they did huge work, as I say, supporting the men that went out in active service, the likes of Thomas Keane, and lost their lives, I suppose, for the ultimate sacrifice. So, as I say, I'm delighted to be here this morning to unveil this plaque. It's a great privilege to be here for me because of my background and I suppose my connection to the past. I want to thank Mike McLaughlin and his committee for standing up, I suppose, and coming together and putting this plaque on the wall. And I know they have further projects ahead. He was telling me there a while ago about the book that they hope to bring out later in the year. And I think from a council perspective, we'd like to support that. I know Councillor Ledden and Councillor O'Brien will back me up on that. So if there's anything we can do, Mike, to support that, we're there. So now we do the official unveiling, and thank you all, and chat to you all shortly.
Before we conclude the ceremony, there are some people I need to thank for their support. But firstly, before I say that, it's nearly 11 years since I started this project, and sorry, I'm getting emotional now because I always want the Keane to be remembered. Firstly, I would like to personally thank the opportunity to thank the three other members of our group, Tom, Stephen and Mike. The first time we've been together in the flesh, we've had numerous Zoom meetings, some funny, some not so funny. We have three sponsors for this project. Councillor Emmett O'Brien made a substantial contribution to our costs, along with contributions from the Organisation of National Ex-Servicemen and the Irish United Nations Veterans Association. Thank you very much. The military team for their attendance today and their positive support. Joe Ledden for proposing our plaque application at last September's Limerick City Council meeting. The residents of Woolstone Street who have been very helpful, not least Nora Constable and her endless offers of cups of tea. Thank you, Nora. Also, residents Breda and Sean Nash who have been very helpful and very positive. Des Ryan for his research support. Thank you, Des. Des Long for his wise words, and I would like to acknowledge his efforts and his wife Annette have done to ensure that the Republican plot in Mount St. Lawrence was fully revived. Des was chairman of the fundraising committee, and his wife Annette has made a wreath for us, which you have here behind me, which we're going to lay later today at Tom's resting place in Mount St. Lawrence. Sean Curtin for his sourcing of King's relations. Two people from Limerick City Council have been most helpful. Tom Cassidy, thank you, Tom. and Rory McDermott, who managed to get the street closed off for us. Sergeant Mick Byrne of Roxburgh Garda Station, very, very helpful indeed. Sean Gannon, Mike Maguire and Liam Hogan of Limerick Library Services. Sean, who over 10 years ago researched Tom Keane's file at Kew in London for me and led me on a path that ensures we have the ceremony here today. Sean constantly encouraged me to keep researching and was exceptionally supportive. My brother Barry, although a historian living in Vienna, kept urging me and reminding me to have Keane remembered publicly. And lastly but not least, my very patient wife, Bill. Before we have our national anthem, I would like you all to pause and reflect for 1 minute silence, and thank you all for attending. Stay home. Just one person I forgot to thank, and very important guy, Mr. Randall Hodgkinson. Thank you, Randall, for putting up the plaque and putting the niece curtain on it. Thank you so much. So thanks very, very much for coming today. It means a lot to me. Thank you.